it's Jennifer, and I'm here on a Friday afternoon, and this Friday doesn't feel kind of as a normal Friday would, where there's kind of a bit of excitement or kind of this luster of the start of the weekend. It's kind of like the days are running into one another, and this Friday feels a little bit different, and I wanted to connect with you guys and just kind of talk about a few of the things that have been on my mind. And I've been thinking a lot lately about a couple things, and they're all kind of around the same area of thought. So remembering kind of the grief recovery method that I've done with some of you, one of their definitions of grief is the conflicting feelings at the end of or change in a pattern of behavior. And I also think about the idea of grieving changes. So there's a real grief, which is kind of defined as conflicting feelings when any pattern of behavior changes or ends. And so would you say that we're experiencing grief right now? Because a lot of different things, patterns of behavior have shifted or changed or are non-existent, and we're having to come up with new ways to do things, finding a new normal. And so the idea that we grieve our changes, and then that it's really normal to have conflicting feelings right now. And I'm also seeing a lot of memes on Facebook and Instagram, or just even kind of really people talking about how they're finding silver linings in this experience, and how there's been some transformation in the way that they're looking at themselves and the world and their relationships, and I think that's beautiful. And I think that it is really profound, the changes that we're seeing. I also want to make sure that it's not at the expense for myself, and then I just think in general that looking at the positive things, or kind of finding what we're getting out of something, not at the expense of what the actual other conflicting feelings are, whether that's fear or sadness or anxiety, that really also deserve attention, and not to be, sometimes I think we cover over them with this, okay, we need to find the silver lining, or we need to find the meaning for this, kind of in a way to distract us. And so I've kind of been thinking about just a couple instances during this experience, personally, kind of sharing with people in my life, or about some of the struggles or some of the feelings of loss that I'm experiencing, or some of the feelings of anxiety. And I think it is pretty common for people to respond with kind of these intellectual statements like, well, at least this, or, you know, it could be worse, or look at the bright side. And I know that they're coming from a place that feels helpful for them. I don't know about you, but I'm sure you can find at least one experience where you've been open and honest with someone about what your experience is, and they're not able to hold that for you. And the way that we know that they're not able to hold that is because they intellectualize or try and help us to feel better by using the idea that it could be worse. Yeah, intellectually we know that it could be worse. It can always be worse. But right now, when we're experiencing something, it sometimes feels like, no, this is worse. This is something that's not new to me. It's something that's causing stress or anxiety or sadness. And so typically what happens when those around us aren't able to hold that for us, or, you know, for whatever reason, that's about them, right? That's more about them and their ability to sit with difficult emotions or challenging emotions. But what typically starts to happen, or has happened, is that we'll then kind of lose a little bit of trust, I think, for those people in our lives. And we'll kind of go back to just dealing with it on our own, and not really being open and honest about what our experience is. one of the grief recovery methods, myths of grief, is this kind of really Western, or I don't know if it's Western or it's a global kind of idea that don't feel bad, that that feeling bad is not necessary, or that it's not acceptable, and so we need to kind of get to the positivity of things. And again, like I'm saying, I think that it is a really profound experience to be able to acknowledge and to kind of sit with our feelings and come up with things that have been profoundly transformative or that we are grateful for. I think that that happens naturally sometimes, but only do I think it's helpful when we come to that conclusion on our own. And always, I think that it takes a lot of courage to adopt the both and concept. I can feel really sad and scared and anxious about this experience, and I can also see the beauty of being able to spend more time at home, as an example. It's not like, oh, this is so wonderful that I'm getting to stay at home and I'm so grateful for this, and everything's groovy. It's, this is a really hard experience, and I also feel that there's some positives with it. So I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to embrace both. I think sometimes it's really hard for us to do that. We go kind of back and forth. And I feel like there can be a social pressure to go to the more positive, because that makes other people feel better, and that in turn, we get approval through that. We can kind of get connection, not real connection, but we can kind of get more, not necessarily connection, we can get more approval from other people when we just kind of look for the positive. Why is it that it is more difficult to sit with our emotions? I think one fear that we have is that if we go towards the difficult emotions, one fear I think that happens is that we're afraid that it's going to overwhelm us, or that it's going to get so big and then we'll never recover. And when we kind of step back from that, we realize, that's not necessarily what happens. What we do know is that usually when we're able to kind of go towards those parts of us that are feeling really strong, challenging emotions, that if we are able to kind of just sit with it a little bit and not try and escape, not try and distract, they oftentimes will relieve. And once we've been able to kind of give them space, those emotions will usually kind of will go into the next moment, and we'll be able to kind of move forward from them. I would suggest, because I think that it's harder to kind of look at the huge thing and say, okay, I'm not going to be able to just sit with all of my emotions, but I think one of the maybe an easier thing to do is just kind of start with a smaller emotion, or a smaller, more of a benign situation. Like for example, kind of just the idea, like that feeling of, well, this is a very simple one, but going to the supermarket and not being able to find eggs. And I know that this may feel like, that's in the large scheme of things, that is very benign. But to tell you the truth, for someone that eats eggs every day, again, pattern of behavior is being shifted. This is one very small thing on one level, but kind of a big thing when you start to kind of, what it's brought up for me is that, are we not going to be able to get the things that we need? That kind of speaks to a larger kind of fear, right? And so as I'm able to just even go to that part and just kind of sit a little bit with that discomfort of not being able to get what I'm used to getting, and kind of whatever that brings up for me, to start with that and to kind of then feel it, care for it, nurture it in whatever way, but just kind of acknowledge it and move on. And just a reminder that whenever we are kind of having a strong reaction to something, it's usually it's about more than just what's happening right now. A lot of the times, if we're having a very strong reaction, it is perhaps more childlike parts, or kind of that experience that we had as a child, or as we've grown up, that they've kind of built upon this experience. And so it kind of builds upon, it's kind of a cumulative amount of emotion. And I know that we all can probably pick times or recognize times recently where even in everything that's going on, and it would be completely appropriate and normal to have challenging emotions with what's going on, but we can see, if we can really look at it, that there are times that we are having an intense reaction that doesn't only have to do with right now. And we can all, I think, if we give ourselves a little bit of space, we can kind of find times where that's happening. I just want to make sure, I'm looking at my notes because I wanted to make sure to share everything that I've been thinking about. So I think I've shared everything, but I just wanted to kind of again summarize that this is a time where it is completely appropriate to have conflicting feelings. I would love for us all to get to a place where we recognize that all emotions are and all parts are welcome. And just by acknowledging them and having the space or giving the space to sit with them a little bit, it likely is not going to overwhelm us. It may feel overwhelming in the moment, but as we kind of sit with that without trying to distract or to cover up or to redefine or to intellectualize and explain things away, what is likely to happen and what we know to happen is that they will relieve and that they are transient. So we will continue on in the moment and it won't feel as strong if we're able to give that space to them. So I hope that something in this video was helpful. I continue to think about all of you and hope that you're staying well and healthy and safe, and in the interim taking care of yourselves and taking care of those around you. And I hope to see you guys soon. Okay, take care.